the first day of fall. I was like, see, you just had to wait for it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird though how it was
Say.
somebody flipped.
So who are we gonna have at Gumbo on Monday?
I don't think we have anybody lined up. I mean, other than us, our regulars, at least that I know of. I'm hoping Alan feels better, but I don't
Which
even know
one?
what a good friend is. And he says that basically he's kind of laying low just because coming out of surgery and the COVID, you know.
Yeah.
I like some of this stuff. I like short story collection, Slow Learner. I like
So,
It would be nice if some of the people who just
You
popped
made
in
an
last time
attempt
were
at
there.
Gravity
It
Rainbow.
was
I
nice.
have.
That'd be great.
I made a lot
Maybe
of
we
money on
recruit
the
a
first
couple of other
edition
people to
copy I
come.
found.
Yeah.
I still never
Yeah,
read it.
right.
Hey, Julianne.
Front to back.
I know. I'm trying
It's
to.
up there
I was
with,
like trying to find that one
Ulysses and,
online. It wasn't as easy to find as this one, so that's
I'm
what.
trying to think.
Well,
what
I don't
else,
think there is a website.
my
John Freeland,
Gigantos,
I gave you his,
I'm gonna
Yeah.
finish eventually.
John Freeland is the guy who runs it.
Okay.
And so he puts it as an event.
Pardon?
And he posts it as an event.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think he's posted it yet for
Wow.
Monday.
You know,
Yeah.
you're
I've
right.
lived off that money for quite a while.
That's great.
Makes it hard to plan.
But sadly, I can't tell you I've read
Well,
it.
I'll keep you
Count
updated.
on
But you know,
the
it's
first
Monday.
Monday, the first Monday of every month unless there's a holiday.
Okay.
I hear you.
That's
Yeah.
been pretty.
Alright.
Okay, everybody, welcome. I hope would have more people today. Maybe more people will trickle in. I think the weather's too nice. And I told Jason after this done, he and I have to go out and fly box kites together. So, gotta do it. The primary reason why I scheduled a reading today is because Tony's here. Tony Brewer, if a lot of you guys know him, a few of you don't. We're lucky to have him right now as an OAC resident, as a returning OAC resident. You know, we gotta keep making sure you don't get things done, Tony, so you keep coming back. Jason and I had the pleasure and the privilege of publishing this book, Pity for Sale, which was the first title on Gasconade Press. We're about to put out the second, which is Laura Martin's Haiku for the Undead. And she just better get her ass in here. So, but, all right. So, I don't even know if I need an open mic list today, but we will make one. Usually I talk a lot because I have multiple people up here. We were supposed to have M. Scott Douglas in. Hopefully we can get him in the future. I should mention future programming. On the 22nd, I am going to be reading here with my friend Wesley Hine from Los Angeles, who will be coming through. I want to add one or two more people to that, so I may reach out to some folks. And then on November 5th, Brenda Lincoln will be doing her book launch here. And hopefully a book launch by Steve Bridges, hopefully.
Yes.
I mean, you're the man that has to apply the pressure. I can't, not in this hat. Gotta do it. All right. So that's our schedule for now. I'm thinking about adding some more readings in November as well. So I will stop talking, and since you are our only featured reader today, Tony, read as much as you like. And I would just like to welcome up Tony Brewer.
Thank you, John Dorsey.
And I stole this from you, so I can
Oh.
show it to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got one. So yeah, so this has been a good week. This is my third time out here.
I think
Second.
so.
It's my third time out here. It's my second residency.
Officially, yeah.
Official
Officially.
residency. I was back here in April for a week, and I need to come longer because I've been here for just a week, and I've been playing with letterpress out in the type shop with some success and some not success. Will not call it failure. I need more time.
I think like sometime you and I have to make a goal of like creating a book together that where we each throw a single poem.
Right.
And maybe between the two of us we can typeset 2 poems.
I think maybe, yeah. So I got a bunch of new stuff, and unfortunately it means I got to read it off my phone. I know. I'm gonna be one of those poets. But I got a book. Actually, have a book coming out, chapbook coming out, published by Tim Heerdink.
Nice. There he is. The last thing he did before he passed.
It's coming out at Last Lights Press by Tim Heerdink later this month. Hopefully by the end of the month. And it's a little Halloweeny. It's called Scythurism, which is a fancy word that means the sound of rustling leaves and the wind in the trees. And it's based on a reading I gave at a park last October, all about leaves and trees and whatnot. So I just want to do one from that little book. And it's essentially, it's not really one long poem, but it's untitled poems. So this is from Scythurism. Did you sit in golden rays today and forget about the rest of the world? Plastered like a leaf to a window, did the light reveal veins and ribs where weather creeps in? The neatly trimmed is overgrown. The old ones are with us still. The rest of the world on both sides of the veil, insulated from seasons, has hard rules about the phase after this one. Moments long gone are with us, whistling like wind crackling bent branches, arcing against watercolor sky. One traveler among many is leaving the wooded sanctuary, twisting toward who knows where. Leaves like wings of pages open, illuminate, and close. Another thing I've been working on out here is transcribing a bunch of stuff out of my notebook from the year. So I do a lot of poetry on demand, where I sit at art festival or music festival or some sort of live event and make poems for people. They give me a topic, we have a little chat for about 5 minutes. I make them go away and then come back in 10 or 15 minutes and I have a poem typed for them. And the manuscript I've been working on, I'm looking for a publisher in the next year or so, is the Poems Left Behind, which are the poems that people didn't come back for. And I've got about, and they're not all by me, they're by a bunch of people that I've worked with over the years. So that's one. And then I've been doing this for about 12 years, and I think I have somewhere north of 650 poems that I've made in about 12 years. So I like to just kind of dip in every once in a while and pull out some. So I've got a few recent ones that I just typed up this week, because I make a longhand draft before I type them up. So I'm really bad at taking pictures of them too. So here is one from Labor Day weekend, from the 4th Street Festival in Bloomington. I'm from Bloomington, Indiana, by the way, I should mention that. This is from the 4th Street Festival, September 4th this year. And I gotta tell you the story of this one, because this was one of the highlights of the festival this year. A friend of mine stands at the intersection where we're set up to do this poetry on demand stuff, and he kind of just ushers people over, kind of like a Carney Barker, you know, he just kind of shuttles people over to the booth. And they show up sometimes not even knowing why they're there. He just kind of gets them to come over and we start talking about poetry. And so, you know, he's doing this all day, and I look up and there's a new person, and I work, and then I look up and there's a new person. And he shuttled, kind of convinced 3 young women to come over, and they were wearing Notre Dame soccer jerseys. They were all on the Notre Dame women's soccer team. And, you know, 3 of them all in uniform. And they were playing a game that day there in Bloomington. And so we were talking, you know, we're chatting about, okay, who wants a poem? Which of you wants a poem? One girl said, well, the other 2 said, well, you should get one for Vic. You should get one about Vic. Vic was her new boyfriend. And they just started jabbering about Vic, what a cool guy he was, how he had a girlfriend when they met, but they figured that out. And I said, okay, and I'm writing notes and taking notes. And then I look up and suddenly there are 8 of them, all in uniform. And the one girl is kind of getting pushed to the side, and they all just start jabbering about Vic, what a great guy he is, how perfect they are together. And I just kind of said, okay, you ladies need to go over there. I need to talk to her about Vic for a little while. So we had a good talk about Vic. And this is the poem. This is called How It's Going. My eyes are up here in the ether of texts that tether us, but my heart is there. My best friend first, now something else, something more, something along the lines of devotion now. We've figured out that South African situation. Not looking at the time, but finding and making time for each other. We are the game. 2 players taking their shot in a volley we keep out of the net despite overwhelming uniformed interference. We got this beautiful thing now I call missing you.
And then Vic is a good guy.
Vic sounds amazing.
But she
Like,
didn't
what's-
come back and get the phone.
What's Vic's number? She did come back for the poem.
Oh.
These are, yeah, I mean, I could read one out of here.
When you mentioned the 600 number, I was like, 600 left behind? But you mean
No, there's like,
total.
I've made about 600 lifetime.
Okay.
600 some lifetime. There's about 40 in here, and they're from, you know, a bunch of different people. But here's one I liked that no one came back for. And I keep these because people do come back for them. I think the longest interval is 2 years
Wow.
from someone not coming back, and then 2 years later coming back to the same event and asking, you don't happen to have a poem about such and such? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Yeah. And a handful of them, still have their names on the envelope, like have their names on the envelope. So
What would have been great is the person had been like, I just had to go to the bathroom.
right.
Do you charge them interest?
What's it?
Do you charge them interest
Yeah, I
for
should.
the 2 years?
Storage fees.
One of my favorite stories. This happened to Joan, my friend Joan
Okay.
Hawkins.
Yeah.
So I roped Joan into doing poetry on demand for an event back in Bloomington. She doesn't really do it very often, but I roped her in because I needed help. And she wrote a poem for. This was on campus at Indiana University, and she wrote a poem for a young woman from India who was pining for her boyfriend. She was doing, I think she was doing undergrad here, boyfriend's back in India. And so Joan wrote a love poem, romance poem, a lot of requests for those. 4 years later, this young woman came up to an event at a different event at 4th Street Festival there in Bloomington, and she just happened to pick the 2 hours that Joan just happened to be on staff at that point, and said, you know, I had this poem made at another event on campus 4 years ago, and here he is getting married next week. Could we get another poem from?
Huh.
And I said, well, here's Joan. And she had the poem with her too. She had the original poem with her too. Super, super sweet. So of course Joan made another poem for her. So that's why I like doing this stuff, because it's a slog. It feels like a job sometimes, but it's a pretty sweet job. And here we go. Here's one in here by me that I like. Oh crap, where are you? So I had my set list all planned out, and now I'm deviating, and that's what happens. And I know it's in here. Oh, there's a pretty good one, but that's not the one. If I can't find it shortly, we'll go with that one. A little hard to pull apart. I also do eulogies on demand. There's a cemetery back in Bloomington that there we go, that does haunted cemetery tours. So it's kind of a historic. It's the oldest cemetery in Bloomington. Like Hoagie Carmichael's buried there, Alfred Kinsey's buried there. A bunch of people are buried there. So they have people from the historical society dress up in costume and take people at dusk and take people on tours around the cemetery. And it's kind of spooky. And they install me at one point, and I make eulogies for people. I call it elegies, really, elegies on demand for people, and that's fun. It's the same thing, except all the questions are in past tense, like what kind of life did you lead? What was your favorite vacation? That kind of stuff. Anyway, here's one that no one came back for, and this is from, again, 4th Street Festival, September 3rd, 2016, and this is What Would Thoreau Do? These are days the pond was made for. The isolated mind, like a skipped stone, riding its own echo, then sinking. The safe space of the forest, unencumbered, disinterested. The fertile earth, perfect, and unable to vote. Eternal outsider inside us all. Okay. Fact ones that people did come back for, which is why I don't have a copy of it. This is called, excuse me, this is called Something's Up with the Moon. Something's up with the moon. Cracked a wry smile last night at a tree break, ran away behind the courthouse, then reappeared, uncontainable by clouds. Same satellite blasted Earth with sun's ego, makes the ER go crazy. Just a process, man, documented even by ancients to tell time and tide, even when it's been a bad year all decade. Glad it's a permanent condition. Don't listen to those calling it just a phase. And this is a very recent one that I did at a First Friday event, September 2nd, 2002. And this one was, the prompt for this one was the telescope, the new telescope, is it James Webb? Is that the new telescope? Okay. The James Webb telescope, about how amazing that is, just something along those lines. Like, okay, I can do that. This is called Seeing Things. The tree said, eat this from my body, for it is knowledge and it is good. Okay, so take a picture. It'll last longer. 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000 billion, in fact. Side eye of Jupiter, or the wound at the center of every galaxy. We're just winking along here in our tininess with new and improved eyes, never meant to see some things so clearly, bringing the mysterious distance into sharp, relentless focus. I wrote this one here, and back in April, and I left it behind. I was in 701 with Mac, and I just kind of left it in the house, kind of left it in an envelope in the house, and he took it, which is cool. I know he posted a picture of it on Instagram, but he left my business card behind, which I'm happy about. So, in that little, that little alcove with the Nokia phone, yeah.
No, I'm glad that he took it. I was gonna be sad if he told me it was still in the same.
It didn't have his name on it or anything, so that's cool. But it was kind of for the community or whatever, and it was based on it may be a little hard. It may be a little hard to follow because it's based on conversations that he and I had while we were there, while we were rooming together, and a couple of kind of spooky stories that Mark told me about Belle too, about some of the houses that they've acquired. So this is called Toll of Belle. Regret over not playing the coin pusher at Paget's place because I know I'd win. Regret not asking Cheryl at Mace's to marry me and see what happens. The Gasconade is too full, too swift. Jack London flashbacks thinking about Thursday night bonfire. No lightning bugs till June. April now, and sunlight gives tired farm gear menace. 2 cars on the road called traffic. Had a party the 3.4 minutes I was in Casey's for tall boys, but everybody just drove off. Barn full of letterpress calling my name, I taught them, upside down and backwards. I will continue to haunt Mr. Positive, Mr. Revenant. Ghosts are not believable, but some places are spooky. Something still gets you in the end. So that's enough of those. Yeah, that was Mac and I got hung up in this conversation about, because Mark had told me about some of the weird things that had happened in some of the buildings, some of the houses around here, like the young girl that suffocated. Did you know about that one? Like people that have died in some of the houses and that kind of thing. We were talking about how, psychic residues stay in places. Call it haunting, call it whatever you want. And Mac was like, yeah, that's not really true. I'm like, well then why are some places actually spooky? Like why is a place spooky? I don't believe in ghosts either, but there are some spooky places in the world that are definitely creepy and make you feel uncomfortable to be there.
I remember when I first met Mark, he was like, well, just so you know, you will hear some sounds out here that are unexplainable. And I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, like it is spooky.
It's like UFOs. UFO does not mean a flying saucer from another planet.
No.
It means an unidentified flying object is what it means. At least that's what they want you to believe.
Hey, they acknowledged them in 2020.
That's right. Okay, so I also wanted to read a bunch of my typesetting poems and poems about books because that's what I've been up to. So here's a few of those. This is curators of a sort. They rescinded the order to wear gloves when handling rare books because they make them hard to hold. Hot and sweaty, the curator's caress is filthy as skin, even behind cotton, conserving patina like a monk. Washing your hands is just as good. Gloves, they determine, decrease the ability to feel and increase risk of rip or drop. We rely on the tactility of manual dexterity of bare hands to make us persevere, want to feel the fragile edges of each other, and lift friable ink from pages with our own nervous oils. No false security barrier, not butler's hands, Mickey Mouse menstrual hands. Strip the plastic off grandma's couch and let's get nasty on the doilies someday. I'm joking now, but librarians do it in stacks, and once the gloves are off, you'll never wear them again. Let's see. Yeah, we'll do this one.
So when you say they're typesetting poems, are they just sort of typesetting projects?
Usually like they're about typesetting.
Okay.
Like they're about typesetting, or books, like this one, the Bibliophiles. The Bibliophiles. Her moves in italics were making him bold. Their correspondence required a legend. Their love a construction stronger than paper. Calligraphy brushes marked without tearing. She finished strokes he had barely begun. Her moves in italics were making him bold. In a flopped over hardback she was wearing, he kissed every ear she licked with her thumb. Her moves in italics were making him bold. Risked marginalia skimmed without caring, broken open spines, pages coming undone. Their love a construction, acid-free as paper. How much strain before the unzip of tearing. Their love of language was a righteous one. Their love a construction, permanent on paper. He writes now only to see how she's faring. She never writes, poems or letters. She's done. Her moves in italics were making him bold, but love's a construction as fragile as paper. This is another book type poem. This is the golden section is where we keep everything. So dark within the confines of our book, we peer into its secrets with the pale light pages permit. Divine a message slapped there by machine. So many chances errors will be introduced. The more eyes on us, the more we are refined. And all the little hinges sewn inside where we open and close, sit or stand. So much lost in our retelling, immediacy tempered by editorial vigor, urgent air of lung and throat eaten out and digested by intellect. So few ingredients recognized once the chef has had his way, the sacrosanct rendered scandalous by typographies of design, no God, no master. So exposed, like plucked chickens, our covers ripped off to legalize resale. More food than animal, more meat than meaning. So dark where pages meet in the gutter. It keeps our book from falling apart. Brought forth from the dust by the diligent, returned to where we once more might be found. Okay, here's some things that I wrote. Actually, I wrote this when I was coming out to the boondoggle, inspired by. I may have written it in the parking lot at Cahokia. If I can find it. Yeah. And I don't have a great title for it. I don't really have any title for it. But we'll go with it. They asked at the top. They asked at the top of Monk's Mound in Cahokia if I would take a better picture than she could manage in a selfie. That's when I learned he was blind. I was 1,000 years old and stole their souls just then. The St. Louis Arch photobombed my witness of the march of human progress. One basket of earth up the steps at a time, we haul beer guts to what it was like. He feels the ancient wind off the river in his face. I snapped several because you never know. I don't have to tell them to smile. It's a sign.
Spooky.
Let's
I
see.
don't care what Max says. It's bone chilling.
Let's see. I want to read something out of here after all the build-up. So, should I read out of here? I'll read a couple out of here. Yeah, we'll do this one. Yeah, we'll do this one. There's a lot of dream poems in this, or like poems that take place in dreams. Not so much about dreaming. They take place in dreams or in dream states. This is called Working Through It. I dreamed we were on a cruise, but I was the seductive bartender. Our problems were obvious before this. and I make what you want. We were dirt poor and saved years for this trip where I work while you drink. The movements of the ship are imperceptible, and there are too many people. We are only alone in our stateroom I sneak to after my shift. It is a short dream, a bridge from one odd, unremembered moment to the next. It is meaningless, except my memory of it. We hated cruises, though we'd never gone on one. We have been split for 15 years. I cannot now recall what came before and what came after, blurs and blurs, right up to this clear, awakened present. I'll do one more out of here. Yeah, this one. I don't think this needs any introduction. This is called A Buddhist Eating a Hamburger. This is based on an actual conversation, kind of. A Buddhist eating a hamburger is asked how she plans to atone for this injustice. She replies, one must approach the dilemma with a diamond of eyes, each facet a truth. Wet meat lingering on a concrete floor, farmers raising grain, and vets with vaccination needle shooters, the feeding and stroking and herding a long sequence of metal mazes and latex gloves and awful stained fields, hands touching her meaningfully for the first time belonging to a leather aproned butcher with a bolt gun, a foot switch to a slick drum, and a hot bone saw with a shiny red smile. Ruminate on the genealogy of industrial violence and sustain yourself. For acceptance and forgiveness lead to the cessation of all suffering, she says, taking a big juicy bite. Then she considers the French fries and the potatoes whence they came. Who prays for them? What memorial 8x10 glossy will loom over a candlelight vigil in somber observance of boiling oil and 1,000 crinkle cuts? Who weeps for the vegetables? No one. No one, she concludes, smacking the 57 on a glass coffin of ketchup. Okay, I'll do a couple more. Here's another typesetting type poem. Oh, it's in no, it's in here. It's so colophon. Do you all know what a colophon? You know colophon? Everybody knows colophon. So colophon is they don't put them in every book, but in nicer books, especially a lot of letterpress books, you will see a little thing at the very end, and I kind of describe it in here, but it's basically it's like the credits of a movie that happens at the end of a book, and sometimes it tells you everyone that was involved in the process, and there we go. This is called a colophon condensed. And finally, a little tombstone text at the end describing the typeface and its maker and when it was cut and then remade for WYSIWYG and plastic keys. This book was specially designed by human beings for human beings with a skill dating back all the way to 1977, or if you want to get technical, 1544. The body was set in ITC unicorn rampant with headers in dirty bomb bold, feet and folios in cadaverous italic, printed on left-hand rolled sheets of 69-pound Roman hammer baked pus slide opaque by Goody and Sons Limited. It says so right there in print, so it must be true, like the Bible. Hand, eye, and ego disappear into ink and steel until the skin begins to glow and stain like deckled leaves. A seed's origin, historians and botanists surely would wither without knowledge of, but when you sit down to dinner, it's what's on your plate and how it tastes that matter. Go ask a gardener how his hands got dirty. He won't sell you a recipe for dirt. Yet there they are, all the secrets of a book, when I could almost believe the text had been set by lightning, burning words into the backside of a tree, felled, stripped, folded, gathered and trimmed by the honest hands of a modest God, who miraculously designed the pages so when typos creep in, it's through fault of man, the author's haste, an editor's migraine, a nameless, faceless typesetter's sloppy sin. And then, have a little drink. So when I first started doing book stuff, because I work at a university press. I'm a compositor. Back in the day, they would have called it would be called typesetting. Basically, I take the manuscript and the design and like build the book. But I do it on a computer. And when I was first learning it, I had no experience. Kind of like here, I didn't have any experience on how it worked. I was willing to learn how to use a computer. So that was my experience. And the guy that the first guy that taught me a bunch of it. That's why I call it sins, because he liked to think of typos, typographer errors as sins. Like he was kind of weird, but it's true. There's a really good if you're interested in taking a deep dive into typography. There's one called The Morality of Book Design by the guy that kind of birthed. He's a German guy named Jan Tischel, who basically literally wrote the book on modern book design. He started working at Penguin back in the 60s and kind of revolutionized kind of brought it out of the 19th century and brought it forward. And he was extremely particular about how all that stuff works, very formal. And it was a great read, and I got a lot out of it, but boy, but there is, typography is a moral gray art. I could go on. Okay, so this is my last one. I actually wrote this yesterday. And it got a good response at the deck, so I think I'm gonna go with it.
See, that's the real poetry series out there.
That's right, yeah. And this is kind of about Belle, and kind of like every town like Belle, like the town I grew up in too. So this is called Fabulous Princess Trucks. On dainty neon wheels they glide, tractionless, on skinny tires across the gravel lot beside the grain elevator. Fairy godmother conjured carriages, miraculously dirt-free and rolling coal that could smell like jasmine. But it's just good old clean coal, and the air is thick with diesel clatter. Each coiffed manly royal steps from their spotless 4x4 conveyance, ruggedly tousled and ready for a night of quarter-mile cruising. Their love of ritual pageantry, the showcase of their art, just past sundown, like first stars at twilight. Their engine bays still grimy, motors running rich to smoke and grumble haughtily, in contrast to the outer sheen. Old lady smokers, fresh from the beauty parlor, bouffants wrapped like custom fender flares, who never figured out how to leave this town, or why, when they own the humble runway Tuesday nights, right here.
Yeah, earlier today while I was sitting here, kind of bored, between selling romance novels, I looked up Savannah Kubesh on Facebook again. Couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, John.
It's 100% deck approved. So I'm gonna send this thing around for everybody, and while it's going around, we are gonna have Jason Reber read some poems.
What?
That's right. I mean, you have those books out there. I mean, come on, man.
A warning. Lame.
I mean, what are you gonna do when your knees don't work? You can play now.
I'm leaving.
I'm leaving.
Anyone who wants to read, send this around to everybody.
So I'm kind of like the.
I know you do.
I'm sort of like the music on Jeopardy. Na 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 na.
See, I was just pointing at Wesley right here. You know he wants to.
He's fucking dying. You're not leaving before reading one. Not tonight, maybe.
See, like, this is the perfect moment for you to read. You're just at Jolly right now.
I'm just a jolly. You know, Surly's just over the horizon.
The corner of Jolly.
That's right, Jolly and Surly, that's right, born. Still life of 49 Merc. There's an old primer, black 49 Mercury in the drive, squatting like a junkyard dog with a big toothy stainless steel grin that looks like it's absolutely dying to go for a late Saturday afternoon spin out on the old two-lane highways just outside of town with the windows down and some AM oldie station turned up good and loud. And everybody singing along to Papa Mow Mow, Wop Bop Loo Bob. And maybe pick up a case of beer and some baby Q on the way back in and then proceed to do away with every last bit of it all out in the backyard amongst the fireflies, satellites, and stars.
Listen, you made me believe in love again.
Did it? Yep. That's what I do. I raise you to the mountaintop, then I throw you down into the valley. Oh boy, this is dreams of empty houses. Time is always calling or dropping by without calling at all the wrong goddamn times. Always unexpectedly just coming around and turning up the absolutely most inconvenient and inappropriate moments. Inviting itself in and overstaying its welcome. Bumming all your last cigarettes and beers, using up the minutes on your phone, and finally leaving you this time with nothing but a useless ring of keys, a head full of crackpot schemes, and a vague sense of having forgotten or misplaced something. And for some strange reason, dreams of empty houses and apartments where you just can't be sure you ever been in, let alone maybe even lived once. "13 Variations / Slight Returns on Dr. Williams' Red Wheelbarrow." Or, how the hell does a Japanese fighting kite wind up in the middle of Missouri? So much depends upon a red tricycle left crying out in the rain beside 4 grinning garden gnomes. So much depends upon a red radio flyer wagon overflowing with tulip bulbs and garden tools, to which a bull mastiff pup has been chained all day. So much depends upon a red windmill, doing nothing but lazily churning the bright blue wind. So much depends upon a red rusted out pickup truck stuck in the weeds, bees in its belly, mice in the muffler, a thick forest of sunflowers in its bed. So much depends upon an old red barn barely holding up its own weight beneath the ever-shifting weight of the seasons. So much depends upon a red dirt road winding its way through the hills and valleys of Oklahoma beneath a storm-gray sky. So much depends upon a pair of faded red Chuck Taylors hanging from a power line with a bird's nest in the left. So much depends upon a red tail light barely visible on the road ahead at 5 a.m, don't ask why, on the way to Atchison, Kansas. So much depends upon a red gold koi circling the stem-like leg of a great blue heron in the middle of a stream. So much depends upon the foot-tall day-glow red Liberty spikes on top of the tiny punk rock girl with the baby blue Doc Martens. So much depends upon childhood memories of the giant red tomatoes your neighbor grew every summer in soil sown with iron filings from his machine shop. So much depends upon a red-tailed hawk floating on a current of wind in a sky the color of a sky blue work shirt that's been washed 100 times. So much depends upon a red Japanese fighting kite, wrecked and ruined in the ribcage of a lone willow tree on a hill in the middle of Missouri, and no one, not a single soul around, to answer just one simple fucking question. I'm assuming everybody knows what those are. They're about 10 feet by 15 feet, and they have to be manned about 10, 15 people. And the Japanese get them up, and they fight them, and it's kind of awesome to watch. Dynamite in car turns out to be beef stick, police say. What he thought was dynamite roasting in a locked car with the windows rolled up in late July turned out to be, of all things, a bundle of Slim Jim beef sticks tied together with a length of string, as in, snap it to a Slim Jim, Macho Man, Randy Savage, and all that crap. And it caused him no end of grief in the department for months, even though he'd been king shit of Fuck Mountain last year after shooting rubber bullets and tear gas into that crowd of college kids and old ladies protesting in the park. His union rep had even taken him out for drinks and a steak dinner. Now, he couldn't get arrested in this town. The island of lost personal items and effects. He told us he came from the island of lost personal items and effects, and handed me an ancient cigar box lined and padded with crumpled receipts and scraps of scratch paper with phone numbers and addresses hastily scrawled on them. In it were nested keys, gloves, driver's licenses, sunglasses, and 3 fairly expensive-looking Zippo lighters. Whenever he closed and reopened the lid, different items would be contained inside. Pens, cell phones, and wedding rings, earrings and cufflinks, pocket knives and pocket watches. He carried a fancy oriental parasol, which he claimed gave him the power of flight, and wore hip waders, which he said allowed him to stroll freely around in the fabled river of time as often as he liked, and with little fear of being pulled under and swept away by its notorious undercurrents. He also had an old cane pole, strung with telephone wire, which he baited with glittering baby dreams to lure variations of the truth in all its slippery countenances, and for his own personal and unspecified use, I would assume. The candlelight in our kitchen made his shadow dance a curious dance along the opposite wall, and made his face seem like the face of a grinning bone china Buddha. When he got up to leave, he stopped and said to us, "I wouldn't put too many of my eggs, golden or otherwise, in with planets and stars, nor with lucky numbers and fortunes, no more than I would on dogs and horses." We never saw him again. Thank you.
See, that wasn't terrible. Now you get to sit down again.
Oh,
Relax.
that's what my fear is.
Oh, so you're gonna stand up just to spite
Just
me.
to-
That's how it is. All right. The next, well, first I'll say normally, like when I do these readings, I usually have because I have a bunch of features, we normally take a break. I'm not going to take a break because we don't have that many people on the open mic list. So that way, when we're done, everybody can go talk to Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he doesn't want you to, you force yourself on him. All right. So the next reader on our list I just met last week. I think most of us here did at Caitlin Jones's event at the Lynn Library. I just look forward to hearing more. Julianne.
Thanks. Do you have a time consideration?
Today's a little less of an issue. Like generally, I tell people 5 minutes, but it's not as big a concern.
Go till you get tired.
Well, don't tell me that. Okay, so I have 2 books. I'm going to read mostly out of Bible Belt Revolution. I do a lot of slam poetry. And I just wanted to say your first poem about Belle really made me ache. I tell people I'm the girl from nowhere. I've lived in Labadie, Missouri for 4 years, and that's the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my entire life.
See,
So,
you thought you were from nowhere, and then you came to Belle.
right? And so, but everywhere I've lived has pretty much been in the Bible Belt, and so that's what my poetry is usually about. So here we go. The first one is the title poem. It's called Bible Belt. In the middle of my liberal-leaning, feminist-only, mostly queer, self-aware circle, it's easy to forget where I come from. The Bible Belt. Corn-fed, barefoot Baptist, keep your personal life to yourself, glory, unless your secret is a secret child. Then we want to tell you there are choices so they can tell you God hates baby killers and shame you into labor while they sit at dinner and scold the cretins who take handouts like food stamps and Medicaid. So many choices. They want the best for their children. They want to live to be 100, but cigarettes and automatics are God-given rights redoubled by the Constitution, which is infallible in its amendments. They keep their daughters safe at night, teach them to defend themselves, and hope the world is kind. They taught us that kindness comes easiest to the pretty and compliant. It wasn't to trap us, but to keep us safe and easy, making babies to raise in the heartland with our husbands, because in their minds, everyone gets to outlive their youthful indiscretions. They are funny and witty. Some even have their college degrees and retirement funds to hang like merit badges from chests hunched over the back-breaking work that pays the bills. They are heroes and humble, unless politics are discussed, and even then it's because they truly believe they know best for everyone. Racism doesn't exist to them because they would never tell a dark-skinned man to drink from a different fountain, but they will talk about how wild those people act, like thugs, like animals. Our people would never behave like that. They teach their children blind faith and authority is the only logical option, and forget entirely the summer they told us to drive miles if needed to the nearest lit business if lights flashed in the rear view, lest risk being assaulted like those other girls. They fervently hold on to phrases like God will never give you more than you can handle, but seem to have skipped the book of Job. These people cook Christmas supper and give to charity from checks that barely keep the lights on and pray for babies but won't teach their children how to survive a chemical imbalance. They are doing their best, like all of us, to do what they believe is upright and moral. I forget sometimes their world is small enough to make them think they are succeeding. They don't have to make room in their ideology for someone who loves like me because their God printed a get-out-of-jail-free card in the 1450s. They don't have to listen to the pain of the next generation because suicides aren't soldiers even though the battlefield is in every classroom. Good people with good intentions are watching the world burn because the smoke doesn't reach to the boot heel. Because good people with good intentions will not rise against the manifestation of their destiny. Because good people with good intentions cannot be bothered to part with the teaching of their preachers and read the good book for themselves. Because they just might think for themselves. And readers and thinkers are dangerous creatures in the Bible Belt, where over my dead body applies to their armory, but the dead bodies piling up are their children. And still they talk of tyranny and how that can never happen again, forgetting Columbine and Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech and Parkland, and Merrimack Valley Middle School, where 4 threats in 3 months is normal. Over and over, the dead bodies of dead children who die from abuse and neglect, from their own hands when their own family tells them they are an abomination. Trigger fingers over children. Faith over humanity. Over the shells of the victims laid at their feet by priests' hands when the whole institution should be dismantled brick by brick. We should be paving roads with the bones of the Vatican, but faith and guns are guarded by the kind, by the upright, by the good. How high will they rise before they realize they are standing on the bones of good people with good intentions who just wanted to live? I'm going to make a complete shift just so I can show you guys the breadth of my catalog. I like to write a lot about humor, so I want to make very clear this next poem is about energy, not anatomy, okay? It's called MDE. I am sure you have all heard of big dick energy. That I know what I have, you know who I am energy. That I will make your girls scream or a spooned on like honey or sweat or throbbing heartbeats. Turn every head easily in command, trust me, I've got this swagger. but I'm about to introduce you to something different. Medium dick energy. I'm absolutely sure you've seen it a time or two. You will recognize, for instance, the puffed chest, squared shouldered strut, a little too obvious to anyone who looks. The big show, loud voice, frantic motions to mimic the movements that intimidated them. This is MDE at its finest. The loudest and brightest, keep your woman quiet and alone energy. Throw a punch to prove a point. Who knows, maybe. MDEs are masters of disguise and distraction, unable to attract any attention based on proof. They can't hang with the big boys, so they play in the shallows, staying in the shadows until the right prey emerges. I implore all my male-loving cohorts to take this message to heart. Medium dick energy is dangerous. Push the button because I can mess. Start a war with my orange thumbs. Bless the abusers and condemn the lovers. Drop a child like an old iPhone. Caress you but only to use you up until there is nothing left dangerous. But hear this. The pinprick of kryptonite to their underinflated personality size is the truth. In 2 little words. Prove it. I do have a short essay if there's time. This is from my new book. This is Sex Work and Other Sins from my time when I was a stripper. I've lived a lot of lives. And being from a very poor family, these things happen. And the dedication of this book says we all end up somewhere unexpected, right? This is called Villain. I am the villain in everyone's story. My brain the author of a tale I never tell. I destroy without care, yet all my wounds are from caring so deeply I cut myself on your pain, on your disappointment. I'm missing you even when you hate me, especially when you hate me. I am the black crow spreading omens like seed, planning mayhem, lies, and pain. The black cat crossing paths with the unsuspecting, ruining lives with deceit I never could see or imagine or conceive. I'm not what you think. You see, the shark is in the water and I am barely clinging to a raft that I made with shaking hands, and the evil you see is beneath the surface, dragging me under, and my only plan has been to stay afloat out of the jaws of the monster. You name it something mild, like anxiety. I call it by its name, terror. And you say your ghosts are strong too, but ghosts are only whispers, and sharks are bloodthirsty predators, and I am prey. I used to pray, beg for release, for mercy and quiet, but no one ever came. So I began to fight and managed for a while to stay afloat, but the shark never left. You did, but terror never left. Still, I'm the villain in your story.
We didn't really even need a list today, but thank you, Julian.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you again. I hope that you come back.
Not getting rid of me now, so.
We do this about once or twice a month. So we'll be back again later this month. With that, I will just welcome up John Clayton. John.
Well, I spent a good part of my spare time the last couple of days reading 2 books of poetry. One from each of you. And I got to thinking, boy, a lot of poetry is pretty dark. But I really think there are some people who don't do dark poetry. Ken rarely does dark poetry. Agnes both rarely does dark poetry. And I've done a lot of dark poetry, but I've also done some other things too. So I'm probably the only grandparent here. I have a bunch of grandkids. I have a bunch of kids, and the love of my life died last year. So, you know, as poets are prone to do, they tend to write about things that are important to them. So, I want to start out with a poem written by somebody else. I think it's good to remind ourselves about what our real values are. This poem is called $3 Worth of God by Walter Reese. He's a preacher. I'm not a religious person, but I think I'm maybe a spiritual person. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough God to make me love a black man or pick beets with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want warmth of the womb, not rebirth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. And to the end about dark poetry, this is an older poem that I've written because when I first started doing it with these guys, everything seemed so dark, and my poetry was so dark then. So I wrote this kind of in jest, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. It's called Put a Little Sunshine in My Heart. Why must poets have terrible lives? Is it the pain that forms the words on our way to die? Why can't it be happiness that shapes the word joy? Why not hot chocolate and walnut fudge to make us a little boy? Must there be alcohol or drug abuse to create that emotion that we put to use? I do not know why, but it seems to be true. It takes hard times to bring the emotions out in you. Mental illnesses are grinding, heavy weight. We, our friends and family, must pay the freight. We have the meds, and if we take them, they're good for us too. We feel they slow us down and keep us from being you. Please, oh please tell me, just give me one reason why it's not emotional to sit in the sun. They feel so good, those fingers of light. Close your eyes, the sun is so bright. Surely there's a poem in that, basking in the sun like a fat old cat. Please write a poem that makes me feel good, about a big old plate of spicy food, or the wild woman child, not paying attention, just running wild. A child she is, a woman not yet. She's going to be interesting, on that you can bet. Writing about Icarus may show that we are smart, but it doesn't make me giggle like a big old fart. Come on, writers, poets and all, write something so funny that I have to hold so I don't fall. Now, those of us who have sweethearts or have had sweethearts, we write poems about them and to them. This poem is to my sweetheart. It's called This Girl. I've known this girl for quite a while. Together we walked many a mile. We were young way back in time. Now we're old but doing just fine. We've had our ups and we've had our downs. Love really doesn't have any bounds. They say love travels on a gravel road. We just saddle up and bear the load. I remember a time when I thought she was fine, not noticing that very bright mind. Her intellect has definitely grown over time, and with that power, she tries to keep me in line. Good luck with that, love of mine. Here's to you, I lift my sign. I've always loved her, now I like her too. If you're nice to her, she'll be nice to you. At the corner of her eye, there may be a wrinkle. Look at those blue eyes. Do they ever twinkle? Yes, her hair is gray, and I love that girl more every day. This is about one of my granddaughters. And I'm really tight with this one because when she was little, she lived with me, and I'd get her up in the morning, take her to the daycare, and I was on the bench, so at noon I'd go pick her up from the daycare, and we'd go have a picnic lunch and play in the creek, and in the evening I'd swing her, and then we'd fight over who watched SpongeBob or whether I got to watch Mad Money. Who are you, beautiful child? You're not meek, you're not mild. I think I know you from somewhere in the past. I had a little girl once, but that didn't last. She moved away and made a home of her own. When I think of that, my heart turns to stone. Once in a while, I catch a fleeting glimpse. But that, my friend, is a small recompense for my little girl who said her goodbyes. Once in a while, I see the smile in her eyes. Hear the wit in her words, raised eyebrow and forehead furrowed. I see me. I hear me. Can it be true? I see my little girl in you. I have a bunch of grandkids. I have 15 grandkids.
Wow.
Babysitting is a real trip. And my wife and I didn't always see eye to eye on how they should be treated, which is the impetus for this poem. It's called Grandkids. I want to watch SpongeBob. No, I want to watch Despicable Me. It's a hell of a job, this babysitting spree. Can I have jelly beans? Alice beat her jeans. She's not so mature, it seems. Pam's on the soccer team. Alice is shaking. She has to pee. Sarah hit Pam. Bam, bam, bam. 3 kids singing, each a different song. 2 have no words, just dinging. Might as well be a gong. All on the couch. When it comes to manipulation, not one is a slouch. Singing because they're happy. Don't be sappy. I see the smirks. They're little jerks. You should be happy you made them this way. And I'll leave you with one. You know, they say that, I've heard at least, that the price you pay for love is grief. And this poem is about that for me. It's called A Bottle Full of Tears. Maya said, every storm runs out of rain. Perhaps, but I really don't think that's true. I have a bottle full of tears, wet and salty. I started saving my tears when you went away. I collect them when no one is watching. Sometimes my tears come in a flood. There's no way not to waste some of them. They overflow the spout, run down the sides, and drip on my shoes. Other times they slowly roll down my face and I capture every one. I have a bottle full of tears, but I'm dying of thirst for your touch, for your smile, for the twinkle in your eye. I so miss that look, that old look that passes between old lovers. I miss the sound of your voice and that little giggle when you would say, I'd like a kiss from the handsome man in the red beret. I liked it when your foot found my leg in the middle of the night, just to be sure I was still there. It's still raining in my storm, and I have a bottle full of tears.
I actually had thought about reading a poem by someone else myself, but I did not bring with me. So I'll do that next time I'm here. So with that, I will just conclude the open mic, unless someone else wants to put their name in here, with Ken Gerke. And it's always fantastic to see Ken. And like John said, Ken's poems, they're not dark poems, and they do make me feel good. And, you know, I like to think we all just go through periods, and the work is different depending on when you hear us. But
Right.
yeah, Ken, it's always great. It's always great to
Well,
see
thank you,
you.
John. I enjoy being here. I do have grandkids. I've written a couple of poems about them, but my kids, I've written a lot to and for them. So I'm going to read 3 poems. 2 of them are about missing my parents. First one's about my father. We used to drive out in the country to visit them, and on a weekend it was like a 70-mile drive, and then we would always spend time by the fire pit, you know, looking at the stars, talking, everything. Mantle. Always overlapping, touching at times. The distance between your world and mine grows shorter as the seasons pass. Serenaded by crickets, we poke the embers, while fireflies deliver a semaphore yet to be decoded. Your time, no longer long. Mine, not as short. Your example, the lesson that will guide me through your coming absence. Torrance. This one's with my mom. We used to go to the falls a lot when I was a kid. You know, there's pictures of me bundled up, and I was born in March, and it's winter, so I couldn't have been a month old. You know, and we're at the falls. I mean, everybody's holding me in these pictures. Torrance. Wrapped in the roar of the cataract, you stood with a swaddled bundle, brought to witness the strength of a mighty force of nature. Held close to your breast, winter's ice could not invade the warmth that surrounded me. A strength that has been steadfast to this day, yet has now begun to fade. Wishing that I could hold you close to my breast on this darkest of nights. I am pummeled by a waterfall, emotions that would drown me, if not for the strength you have instilled in me. Thank you. And this is long for me. So, and I was just talking to Bonnie about this. We went to my 50th high school class reunion last year, and I mentioned this one incident toward the end of the poem having to do with the Cadillac to the guy that this is about, and he didn't remember it. So, the funny thing about being 14, remembering John Felix. 13 and 14 during those summers. Sleeping bag and a rolled up shirt for bedding, we slept in the backyard. Yours, mine, Mike's, like a rotation. Every weekend, under the stars. Not that we slept all that much. Too much to do, and never enough darkness, especially if a yard light came on and as we were hopping into a neighbor's pool, skinny dipping of course, years before motion detectors. The neighbor yelling as we made our exit, bare-assed and clutching our clothes. On to the next adventure, running through the yards. I'm sure those people finally sold their house, but it probably didn't help when they woke every Saturday morning to find their for sale sign sitting on their neighbor's front lawn. That one-car garage with a covered side patio sure came in handy. Not that we needed a garage, but that picnic table was a nice spot to sit and have a beer from the tap in the wall. I wonder if that guy ever figured out why his keg of Schmitz emptied so fast. And that Sunday morning, I walked to your house. I can see for miles playing on my transistor. Parents asleep. You were piling the Courier Express into your mom's '62 Cadillac. Told me to hop in. You drove, I ran the papers, and the caddy was back in the garage before your dad was any the wiser. 55 years later, I definitely don't go skinny dipping in strangers' pools or swap lawns with for sale signs. And good luck finding a bottle of Schmitz. I'll take a craft beer anytime. Make that a stout. But every time I read the Sunday funnies, I think of that joyride back in '67. So.
I was probably too young to legally have it.
Right.
That's alright. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. Apologize for being a little bit tired, but I've got to go lecture college students on Monday. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But it was great to have everyone here today. And I will hopefully see you all again on the 22nd, when we will be back at 6 o'clock. And then after that, like I said, we will be back on November 5th. And just thank you everybody for being here. In particular, thank you, Tony. It's always good to have you. Jason, thank you for getting up on your chair. It means so much to me. But please, like, Tony has some books out there on the table, and if you don't know him, talk to him, buy some of those books. Jason has some books out on the table. You don't have to look at those if you don't want to, but they're there. So thank you guys so much.
Can I say something, John?
You can.
It's my job to remind everybody that you have to be registered to vote by October the 12th in Missouri. And if you're not going to get the vote. It's also my job to remind you that you have to have a photo ID this year. The little card that your county clerk always gave you is not good enough. You got to have a photo ID.
Do you have to have the real ID?
No, but it has to have a photo on it,
Okay, so
and
my
or
driver's
a passport would work,
Okay.
See, Tony's off the
or a
hook. He's not a
veterans
Missouri
a
resident.
veterans card, or anything with your photo on it.
Yeah.
And also, there's poetry Monday night at Gumbo Bottoms in Jefferson City at 7 o'clock.
This coming Monday?
Uh-huh.
Okay. How often are they doing that now?
They do it once a month on the first Monday unless there's a holiday in there.
Okay. Yeah, I know they made a special exception for the reading that Jason Baldinger
Yeah.
did, so happy that they did that.
So, you like that too?
I plan on being there, so.
Good.
The sale has been made.
When I got my new photo ID, they automatically registered me to vote. They were like, "Oh, do you want to do that?" They checked it off right there. Yeah, very easy. It's not very late.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.